Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye says investment, innovation and deregulation are the key steps Korea needs to take to become a creative economy and thrive in the 21st century. Korea criticizes Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for sending a ritual offering to a controversial shrine in Tokyo that honors more than a dozen Class A war criminals. Plus, South Korea rejects North Korea's demand for a face-to-face meeting between a group of recently arrived defectors and their families. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, April 22nd here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye has been touting Korea's achievements in science and technology. Making the most of Korea's National Science Day on Thursday, the president said greater investment in R&D and fewer regulations are key to make the next leap forward. Song Ju-son reports.
Growth through entrepreneurship has been the driving force behind President Park Geun-hye's initiative since her inauguration. Characterizing her creative economy drive as the only growth engine for the future, President Park renewed her vow to support new sectors with growth potential.
이를 위해 정부는 신기술, 신산업 창출과 성장을 가로막는 규제와 관행을 과감하게 철폐하고 개선해 나갈 것입니다. 여러분, 창조 경제가 성공하고 신기술, 신산업을 창출하기 위해서는 국가 R&D 시스템의 혁신이 있어야 합니다.
At a meeting of the Presidential Advisory Council on Science and Technology on Thursday, President Park called on the country's scientists to lead Korea's charge into the fourth industrial revolution. She asked them to help dream up new markets able to adapt to a fast-changing world and help the country create more jobs. The government also announced its plan to foster startups in the bio industry and transform carbon emissions into value-added chemical products as a way to reduce greenhouse gases, which is also part of its commitment to the Paris Climate Change Agreement. President Park is set to chair the first strategic meeting on science and technology next month, which is proposed as a way to improve distribution and management of Seoul's research and development resources. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
And Korea's Science Ministry has unveiled measures aimed at boosting the country's biotech sector. It involves fostering startups and a plan to transform greenhouse gases into energy sources. Shin Se-min reports.
At the 33rd Presidential Advisory Council on Science and Technology, presided by President Park Geun-hye, the government said it'll ease regulations on the country's biotech industry in order to raise Korea's biotech market share to at least 5% by 2025. The government also said it will foster more than 100 biotech startups and find ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Korea's Science and ICT Ministry said it'll put its regulatory system on par with other developed nations and help launch global biotech firms in the country. Moreover, the government said it would boost efforts to drop greenhouse gas emissions by 25 million tons by 2030. To do this, the government is seeking ways to transform greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane into new sources of energy. This could represent economic benefits worth some 16 trillion Korean won or $14 billion. The government will also take on the initiative of expanding research projects at an international level and bolster partnerships with other countries. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has once again stoked anger in Korea and China by making an offering to the controversial Yasukuni shrine that honors Japan's war dead and more than a dozen Class A war criminals. Lee Ji-won has more.
The Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs criticized Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for sending a ritual offering to the controversial Yasukuni shrine on Thursday. The Yasukuni shrine honors Japan's war dead, including several Class A war criminals. Abe's tribute came to mark an annual spring festival taking place at the War Shrine in Tokyo.
Our government cannot help but express concern that Prime Minister Abe has once again honored colonization and invasion by paying tribute to war criminals. The Japanese government will have to squarely face history and show its sincere apology through its actions in order to actively work to improve Korea-Japan ties.
China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chuning said that China urges Japan to deeply reflect on its invasion history and take practical actions to win back the trust of neighboring Asian countries. KoreaChina and the international society had slammed Abe for paying respect to the shrine in December of 2013. But Abe had been continuously sending ritual offerings to the Yasukuni shrine every spring and fall ritual since his re-election into the office in December of 2012. Amid Korea and Japan working to improve their relationship, Abe administration's controversial claims and actions raise questions on their sincerity. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
The top nuclear envoys of South Korea and China are set to meet in Beijing on Friday for talks on North Korea as speculation continues to swirl that the regime is planning a fifth nuclear test. Officials say Kim Hong-gyun and his Chinese counterpart Wu Dawei will discuss ways to deter Pyongyang from further provocations, as well as the implementation of UN Security Council sanctions on North Korea, among some other topics as well. The South Korea-China talks come just a day after a bilateral meeting between the US and China. There's anticipation these talks will contribute to increased cooperation between Seoul, Washington and Beijing in dealing with the North Korean nuclear issue. North Korea says it wants to set up a meeting in Seoul, if necessary, between the recent group of defectors and their parents to prove its claim that the former were abducted by South Korea. Kim Mo-gyun reports.
South Korea's Unification Ministry issued a statement on Thursday refusing North Korea's call to reunite 13 North Korean defectors with their parents. The ministry said that the request cannot be accepted when taking into consideration the defectors' willingness to defect, as well as the international practice towards humanitarian issues. The ministry added that the 13 defectors had made their own decision and the South Korean government accepted them based on humanitarian grounds. The group of 13 North Koreans, 12 female waitresses and 1 male manager defected from a North Korean restaurant in China to South Korea in early April. Pyongyang has since claimed they were forcefully abducted by the South Korean government, demanding they be returned immediately. North Korea's Red Cross said that the families of those abducted are earnestly asking for direct contact with them to clarify their whereabouts. They said that they are willing to send the defectors' parents to Panmunjom or even to Seoul if necessary. The North even threatened to launch a strong retaliatory action against South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade if Seoul refuses its demand. Meanwhile, in a report that aired Thursday, CNN carried an exclusive interview with 7 of the defectors' co-workers who returned back to Pyongyang. They claimed that their co-workers had been tricked by the restaurant manager and a South Korean businessman who had coordinated the trip with the South Korean government. CNN said a mass defection would be a humiliating blow to Pyongyang's leadership, especially because it was apparently allowed by China, North Korea's most powerful ally and trading partner. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
Now, restoration work is in full swing after a series of deadly earthquakes killed dozens and left a trail of destruction in Japan's Kumamoto prefecture. The Japanese government is also shifting its attention to the impact it's having on the Japanese economy. Lee Min-young reports.
A week has passed since 2 deadly earthquakes struck southern Japan. They were soon followed by more than 700 aftershocks, according to local sources, especially in the Kumamoto and Oita prefectures. Authorities say 48 people were killed by the quakes, and 10 additional deaths were reported afterwards, with more than 1,000 people injured. While Japan is just beginning to recover from the natural disaster, the economic impact of last week's earthquakes is beginning to reverberate as companies start to report on the damage caused by the quakes and the potential effects on production from supply chain disruptions. One example, Toyota Motors projected a loss of 50,000 units as production in its Kyushu factories has been halted. There are also speculations that the local tourism industry would suffer a heavy blow as Kumamoto is a highly sought-after tourist destination. Nomura Securities, a Japan-based securities and investment banking company, projected that tourism revenue will be cut by 150 billion yen, or $1.3 billion, if the annual number of tourists drops to half the average. Not only that, the latest disaster is expected to push the value of the yen against the US dollar even higher, which would also pose a huge concern for the island nation.
Rather than short-term economic effects of the earthquake, Japan needs to watch out for a possible rise in its currency. With a stronger yen, the Japanese economy could experience a major blow, as it could trim the profit outlook for exporters and other Japanese shares.
What concerns many in Japan is that the latest damage from last week's earthquake could add to the already volatile exchange rate of the local currency amid slowing global economy. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
The European Central Bank has left interest rates unchanged in April as part of efforts to lift both inflation and economic growth. At a regular monetary policy meeting on Thursday, the bank said it will keep its interest rates at 0%, deposit facility rate at -0.4%, and the marginal lending facility rate at 0.25%. Now, following the announcement, ECB President Mario Draghi said all policy tools remain on the table and rates would remain at or below present levels for an extended period of time. Draghi also noted the risk from low oil prices and slow growth in emerging markets, but placed more emphasis on operating a policy that focuses on increasing public investment and lowering taxes. Volkswagen has reached a deal with US authorities on the emissions scandal on its diesel cars. It has offered to buy back or fix almost 500,000 cars that violated emissions standards. The German car maker could also spend around $1 billion to compensate owners of the affected vehicles, this according to the Associated Press. The settlement was reached in principle with the US Environmental Protection Agency, and while specific details were not made available, the final agreement deadline was set for June 21st. In a hearing in San Francisco on Thursday, the judge welcomed the plan. He said the deal included substantial compensation for the owners of cars fitted with emissions cheating software. Korean scientists have succeeded in transplanting human stomach cancer tumours into mice for the first time. The breakthrough is expected to help researchers devise custom treatments for each individual cancer patient. Kim Jung-soo reports.
Although Korea has one of the world's best screening procedures for stomach cancer, finding the right kind of medical treatment for each stomach cancer patient has always remained a tricky task. This is primarily because stomach cancer in particular is highly dependent on the patient's genetic composition. But recent developments in Korea have opened a new door of opportunity and hope for patients and researchers worldwide to determine more accurately the right kind of treatment for each case. The research team, led by Professor Geunhye of Geunhye Medical School, procured tumor samples from 62 stomach cancer patients and created 15 models of avatar mice, or mice that share the same cellular and genetic structures with their human counterparts. These mice are then subject to various kinds of medical treatments.
Imagine that you're shopping for clothes, only this time you're wearing the wrong shirt, and which can cause serious harm to you. So the avatar mice wears the same shirt before you do, so we can determine if the shirt is actually suited for you.
Professor Chung's team, which published the results on the online journal Scientific Reports, is intent on further utilizing the avatar mice to study the nature of recurring cancer cells. According to the health ministry, over 200,000 people in Korea die of cancer every year, and stomach cancer alone is responsible for over 30,000 deaths. With the latest breakthrough, Korea is hoping to see those numbers come down soon. Kim Jung-soo, Arirang News.
Well, those are stories we have for you on this Friday morning here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. Have a great day. Goodbye.